Maya Cole stood under the harsh light as a chorus of phones rose like spears, and the screen behind her flashed a headline that made her stomach drop. She whispered, "That's not what happened," but the chant drowned her. A hashtag screamed across feeds, swollen by strangers who needed a villain before lunch. Lena Ortiz called from the edge of the crowd, "Maya, look at me," but security pulled the line tight. Derek Shaw's post loaded, a neat story trimmed of context and padded with venom. Victor Hale smiled in a distant office where silence paid better than truth. Notifications struck like hail, each ping a bruise that would not fade. Maya said, "I gave them my bones, yet the floor hummed with the mob's hunger." Her speech scattered, a flock of pages rushing for exits that no longer existed. Cameras leaned in, greedy and close, as if inhaling her breath could sell more outrage. Somewhere Ruth Cole turned the TV down and did not pick up the phone. Owen Park paused the clip and frowned at a frame the crowd missed. The plaza emptied, but the noise followed Maya into the echo of her own footsteps, as if the pavement had learned her name and would not stop whispering it. She said, "They built a rumor-like scaffolding and climbed it to watch me fall." A stray poster clung to a bench, rain flattening the ink into a bruise of color that used to be hope. Lena's call broke through at last. "I'm here, I'm not leaving," and relief flickered like a match in a storm. Maya wanted to believe in small fires, but the rain kept teaching her about weight. A bottle rolled, tapped metal, and settled beside her heel, like a period at the end of a sentence she did not write. She asked the night, "When did truth get priced higher than my life?" Sirens sighed far away, resigned and tired. Pab slowed, read her face, and moved on. Somewhere, a printer spat fresh headlines, hot like bread and twice as devoured. The city turned the page without looking up, and she realized the page was her. In a cramped stairwell, Lena pressed a towel into Maya's hands and said, "Breathe with me, count it out." The air smelled of wet concrete and old paint, a basement perfume that did not judge. Maya counted and found numbers steadier than people. A leak ticked in the corner like a metronome for panic. She said, "They want footage, not facts," and kept counting until her shoulders remembered how to drop. Lena nodded, "We fight the frame, not the face." Somewhere, 2 floors up, a door slammed, and gossip scattered like startled birds. Maya pictured the caption writer sharpening verbs. She whispered, "I am not a headline," and watched the truth fog the cold light. The metronome drip slowed in her mind, then kept ticking anyway. They stood in a pocket of quiet, a fragile room stitched from breath and stubbornness. It was not safety, but it was a wall. Derek refreshed his feed and watched the numbers jump like fish in a barrel. Each leap a little thrill he pretended was justice. He rehearsed a line for a podcast invite that would surely arrive before dawn. He said, "It's not personal," to a reflection that smirked anyway. Victor's message arrived like a pat on the head, dressed as ethics. Derek typed, deleted and typed again, trimming doubt until it fit a boast. A calendar reminder slid into view. Panel at noon, topic labeled accountability. He laughed softly, then called it gravity. He did not think about the night air in the plaza, or the color of a ruined poster. He thought about microphones, and how they shine like coins. He told the dark window, "People want a clean story," and the window offered him his own face, tidy and brave. Somewhere, a truth he had ignored scratched at the glass, then went quiet. Ruth stared at the family photo on the mantel and wished frames could explain themselves. She let the phone ring to the end, as if silence could be a gift wrapped in worry. She said, "Please be sleeping," to the house that knew better. The news anchor's voice trod carefully through words that still cut. A neighbor's porch light clicked on, then off, a Morse code for avoidance. Ruth traced the edge of the remote, and remembered a school play where Maya forgot a line and smiled anyway. She wondered when smiling stopped being a bridge and became a dare. The kettle began to murmur, and did not boil. She muted the screen and the room grew louder with what she could not say. She said, "Call me when you want," and the message box kept its small red dot like a wound that refused to close. The night did not answer, but it listened. Maya sat at her kitchen table as the morning sun dared to shine through blinds that should have stayed shut. Her coffee cooled untouched, steam fading like courage. She whispered, "They don't remember the marches, the long nights, the hunger." She scrolled past smiling faces who once praised her, now parroting the same sharp words. Lena texted, "Stand tall, truth doesn't rot," but her hand trembled as she set the phone aside. Ruth's number glowed again on the screen, but silence still weighed heavier than any word. She pressed a palm against her chest, feeling a heartbeat that wanted to sprint away. "Was I ever more than a symbol?" she asked the faded posters rolled in the corner. A pigeon beat its wings at the window, startled by nothing. The world outside seemed too bright, too cruel. A kettle hissed, and she forgot she'd turned it on. Her reflection in the dark laptop screen stared back, familiar but hollow. Lena's voice carried through the narrow hallway as she leaned against the doorframe, steady as stone. She said, "Don't give them your silence. It becomes their victory." Maya shook her head, whispering, "Every word I speak twists into rope." Lena crossed the room, placed her hand on Maya's shoulder, and added, "Then we teach them how to listen." The air held the stale weight of exhaustion and fear. Newspapers littered the floor, headlines repeating her ruin. Maya closed her eyes, imagining applause instead of accusations. The sound of a passing truck rattled the window, a reminder the world had no pause button. "I can't walk outside," she muttered, gripping the armrest. Lena leaned closer, whispering, "Then we'll open the door together." The words sparked a flicker, small but alive. Derek scrolled through the trending feed at a cafe corner table, headphones around his neck like a trophy. He muttered, "This story's feeding me better than my last gig ever did." His screen glowed with likes and retweets, each one stacking like chips at a casino table. He typed another thread, choosing each word for impact, trimming empathy until it vanished. "They want a villain, not nuance," he chuckled, sipping cold brew. The barista glanced at him, frowning at the smirk plastered across his face. Derek tilted his phone, catching his reflection in the glass. He raised his cup, toasted himself, and whispered, "To relevance, finally." The cafe hummed with the quiet lives of others, but his universe shrank to metrics and mentions. Ruth lingered at her kitchen sink, staring at dishes that didn't need washing. The news anchor's voice seeped from the radio, repeating Maya's name until it stung. She gripped the sponge tighter and whispered, "They're crucifying her." Her hands shook as the plates slipped and clattered, but did not break. She turned off the tap, leaned heavily on the counter, and sighed. The fridge hummed like a low judgment. A photo magnet of Maya in graduation robes smiled back, frozen in time. Ruth pressed her palm against it and said, "You were always more than their stage." A knock at the door startled her. Silence stretched before she moved to answer, heart heavy with shame and love. Owen flipped through old footage on his monitor, pausing at frames others ignored. He muttered, "There's something here they missed." His apartment was cluttered with cables and sticky notes, the chaos of obsession. He rewound, zoomed in, adjusted contrast, and leaned closer. The crowd blurred, but one shadow seemed sharper than it should. He took notes, frowning, whispering, "Not her fault, not at all." His stomach twisted at the thought of speaking out. He knew what mobs could do to witnesses. Yet silence gnawed worse. The cursor blinked on an email draft to Lena. He tapped a key, paused, and whispered, "If I don't, who will?" Outside, car horns blared, impatient and careless. The footage played again, frame by frame, each second heavier. Maya walked into the office she once called safe ground, only to feel the silence heavier than bricks. Desks that used to smile at her now looked away. Someone coughed, sharp and rehearsed, as if to remind her she was no longer welcome. She said, "I'm still here," but the words slid under the carpet, unheard. Lena followed 2 steps behind, chin high, daring anyone to challenge. Derek's voice boomed from a corner podcast screen, narrating her downfall while sipping confidence like wine. She pressed her hands flat on the conference table, tracing the scars carved by years of meetings and battles. Victor's absence roared louder than his presence ever did. She whispered, They erased me faster than I built this. Printer clattered in the background, feeding new lies onto warm paper. Her reflection in the glass wall flickered, fractured by the headlines taped over it. The storm outside rattled the windows, joining the chorus of betrayal. Victor leaned against his leather chair, scrolling headlines with fingers that never trembled. He muttered, "Damage control complete," though his smirk betrayed pleasure more than relief. He deleted a message draft to Maya, the apology that would never be sent. His assistant asked, "Should we distance further?" He nodded slowly, saying, "We protect the brand first." The rain streaked down glass, reflecting city lights in warped patterns. He set the phone face down, savoring the silence it gave him. A plaque on his shelf gleamed with her name still etched, a relic he refused to move. He whispered, "She was useful once," as if usefulness was all that mattered. The elevator dinged, bringing another ally eager to step on her memory. Victor adjusted his tie, ready for the performance. Outside, thunder applauded the betrayal. Maya scrolled through her bank app, watching zeros fade faster than breath on glass. She whispered, "Sponsors gone, savings gone, what's left?" The notification bell chimed, cruel in rhythm, announcing account closures. Lena paced the room, muttering, "They don't care about truth, only distance." Maya rubbed her temples, eyes burning. A knock startled both, a courier dropping another letter stamped in bold red, termination. She said, "How many pieces can they take before nothing's left?" The kettle hissed again, mocking the promise of comfort. Outside, neighbors passed by her window without looking up, shadows of indifference. She closed her laptop with trembling hands and pressed her forehead against the wood. Lena whispered, "You're more than their contracts." But the words floated weak against the weight. Derek sat on a studio stool, microphone glowing red. He cleared his throat, saying, "Accountability matters, even for those who hide behind courage." His co-host laughed, feeding the rhythm of mockery. The soundboard clicked, capturing each cruel syllable for replay. He leaned forward, eyes glittering. People deserve the truth, and we're giving it. In his mind, he saw sponsors, followers, doors opening. A producer nodded approvingly, adjusting levels. Derek raised his cup again, like a toast to his own rise. Outside, lightning flashed, framing him in false brilliance. He never noticed the tremor in his voice, a small crack under polished confidence. He smiled wider, filling the space with noise that drowned out doubt. Ruth sat on her porch, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, the night cold and heavy. She whispered, "I should speak, but what if my voice drowns too?" The neighbor across the street glanced her way, then shut their blinds quickly. She closed her eyes, remembering Maya's first speech, the pride blooming in her chest. The memory turned sour as the echo of headlines buried it. She clutched the blanket tighter, as if fabric could shield her from shame. The wind carried faint laughter from a passing group, their words indistinct but sharp enough to wound. She muttered, "Silence is safety," though it tasted like betrayal. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her, Maya's name glowing in the dark. She did not answer. The night listened, holding its judgment. Maya replayed the footage Owen had sent, her breath catching at the detail no one had cared to see. A shadow moved before the headline, proof of manipulation. She whispered, "It was never mine, they planted it." Lena leaned closer, eyes narrowing. Derek edited this, I know his style. The apartment seemed smaller with truth pressing against its walls. Maya's chest tightened, not from fear but from vindication trembling like a fragile flame. She muttered, "They fed me to the fire so they could eat the smoke." The video froze again, frame locked on a hand that belonged to someone else. The silence after felt heavier than the mobs outside. Lena gripped her wrist firmly and said, "This changes everything." Owen rubbed his temples, pacing across his cramped apartment. He whispered, "If I release this, they'll shred me too." His monitor glowed with paused frames, evidence staring back with quiet fury. He typed a message draft, erased it, then typed again. The words blurred as sweat dotted his forehead. His phone buzzed with unread messages from friends warning him to stay out. He muttered, "Silence is easy, truth is heavier." The city outside roared through the thin glass, horns and sirens echoing. He stopped, faced the corkboard full of notes and whispered, "If she burns, so do I." The weight of choice pressed his chest, but his fingers still hovered over the send button. Derek leaned back in the podcast studio chair, sipping from his cup as numbers ticked upward on the dashboard. His co-host laughed, "You've got them eating out of your hand." Derek smirked, saying, "Truth is whatever trends say it is." The producer's phone buzzed, and she frowned, whispering to him about leaks. His smile faltered as she slid the screen across the table. There, in sharp clarity, was the frame Owen had released. His throat tightened as silence replaced the smug rhythm of his voice. He muttered, "That's not possible." The mic kept recording, every crack in his voice stored like evidence. Victor stood at his office window, rain streaking the glass like guilt he would never admit. His assistant stammered, "The leak. It's everywhere." He stayed still, hands clasped behind his back, watching lightning fracture the skyline. He muttered, "Control the narrative, always." But control was already gone, unraveling in public feeds. The plaque with Maya's name gleamed behind him, mocking. His phone buzzed with calls from sponsors he had once promised loyalty to. He did not answer. Instead, he turned slowly, his face carved into calm stone. He whispered, "If the tide turns, we swim with it." Maya's phone vibrated until she finally answered, Owen's voice shaking on the other side. "It's out. They can't bury it now," he said. Her breath caught, the weight of months shifting in an instant. Lena clutched her arm, whispering, "See? They can't erase you." Tears blurred her vision, but for once they were not carved from despair. She whispered, "Truth breathes again." Outside, sirens wailed, but the sound felt less like menace and more like announcement. Ruth's voicemail finally arrived, trembling but there. "I believe you." The words shattered her last wall of loneliness. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Then I can stand again." Maya stepped into the town hall, flashes blinding her as reporters shouted questions that felt like knives. She raised her chin, voice steady though her hands trembled. "You wanted truth, now you'll hear it." Gasps rippled through the room, her words colliding with the roar of doubt. Lena stood at her side, whispering, "Don't let them steal your breath." Victor watched from the back, mask of indifference hiding his panic. Derek leaned forward, pen tapping nervously against his notepad, his once smug grin nowhere to be found. Maya unfolded the letter Owen had given her, its ink carrying proof heavier than stone. She said, "They framed me," and silence crashed over the crowd. For the first time, the mob hesitated. Owen streamed the video live, his voice trembling yet strong. "This is the frame they never showed you." The feed exploded with comments, thousands piling in. His hands shook, but he continued, "The lie came from within, not from her." His chest heaved as the truth poured across screens. In living rooms and cafes, strangers paused mid-bite, eyes widening. Ruth sat frozen, hand over her mouth, whispering, "My girl." The sound of notifications pinged endlessly as the mob's rage cracked open into doubt. For the first time, the storm scattered. Derek slammed his fist on the desk, muttering, "This wasn't supposed to happen." His co-host stammered, "Should we cut the feed?" Derek's voice cracked, "No, control the spin." But the chat had already turned hostile, flooding with accusations. His smirk had dissolved into panic, each bead of sweat betraying the collapse of his empire. The producer whispered, "They've seen it, Derek. It's over." His throat tightened, realizing the mob that once crowned him had turned its blades. He whispered, "I built this fire, but the flames no longer belong to him." Victor poured himself a glass of whiskey, hand steady, though the cracks had begun to show. His assistant stammered, "They know you orchestrated it." He sipped slowly, muttering, stories shift. People forget. Yet, the call log on his desk glowed with unanswered demands. He turned away from the window, eyes meeting the plaque with Maya's name. Law. For the first time, his smirk faltered, the mask slipping. He whispered, "Not this time," as thunder cracked across the skyline. His empire, once untouchable, trembled with the weight of exposure. Maya stood before the crowd, hands no longer shaking. She said, "You tried to bury me, but the truth breathes louder than lies." Applause began hesitantly, then swelled, breaking the tension like floodgates. Lena's hand squeezed hers, firm and proud. Ruth finally appeared at the back, eyes wet, whispering, "I'm here." Maya's chest rose with a breath that felt like freedom. Derek lowered his head, Victor turned away, and Owen watched from his screen, tears glistening. Maya said, "I will not vanish," her voice ringing like a strike of iron. The storm outside broke, rain easing as light cracked through. The applause faded into a fragile silence as Maya walked out into the rain-washed street. She whispered, "Freedom feels louder than thunder." Lena wrapped an arm around her, saying, "You broke them, Maya." Her phone buzzed again and again, messages piling from strangers who once condemned, now begging for forgiveness. She ignored them, eyes lifted to the gray sky splitting into faint streaks of dawn. Ruth caught up, breathless, pressing her hand into Maya's. "You never stood alone," she murmured. Maya's chest shuddered, tears mixing with raindrops, not from defeat but release. The city hummed differently now, less like a mob, more like a crowd learning to listen. Owen sat before his monitor, watching the replay of his broadcast climb into millions of views. His voice trembled as he said to himself, "They know the truth now." His inbox overflowed with praise and threats, each one proof of the risk he'd taken. He leaned back, exhaustion pressing into his bones, but a flicker of relief brightened his eyes. He whispered, "It was worth it," before closing his laptop with a shaky hand. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to breathe without fear. Derek stared at the dark screen of his studio, microphone cold and silent. His co-host had left hours ago, leaving only the echo of his own failure. He muttered, "They'll forget me before lunch." His fingers hovered over the keyboard, searching for words that no longer carried weight. The chat feed had turned into a wall of condemnation, his followers dissolving like smoke. He clenched his jaw, but the swagger was gone. Alone in the quiet, he whispered, "What's a voice without listeners?" And the silence answered back. Victor stood in the boardroom, shareholders' voices slicing through him. "You lied," one shouted, "and we paid the price." His polished calm faltered as screens lit with his exposed messages. He muttered, "I acted for stability," but the words sounded weak. The crowd of executives turned away, already treating him like a ghost. For the first time, power slipped from his grasp. He clutched his briefcase, whispering, "Control is gone." Maya sat by her window that night, city lights flickering beyond glass. She whispered, "I don't know if they'll forgive, but I know I survived." Lena handed her a mug of tea, smiling softly, "Survival is louder than forgiveness." Ruth touched her shoulder gently, saying, "You've carried more than most could." Maya closed her eyes, the weight still heavy, but no longer unbearable. She breathed deeply, feeling the world settle. For the first time in months, she felt the ground beneath her steady. The plaza stood empty under morning light, echoes of the storm replaced by quiet. Maya walked across the square where her name had once been chanted as a curse. She whispered, "This ground remembers my fall, but it will remember my rise too." Lena followed close, saying, "History bends, but it doesn't break you." Maya touched the railing where the crowd once leaned and felt no fear this time. She lifted her face toward the pale sun, breathing deep, no longer hiding from the world's gaze. Ruth stood in her doorway, hands clutching a framed photo of Maya. She whispered, "Forgive me for my silence." Her voice cracked, but her heart steadied as she stepped outside, carrying the photo against her chest. She muttered, "The world may not deserve you, but I will stand with you." The breeze caught her hair as she finally faced the street that had once felt too cruel. She exhaled and felt lighter, as if shame had loosened its grip. Owen uploaded the final set of documents, pressing enter with a shaky breath. He said, "Now it's complete. Nothing left hidden." His screen filled with confirmation, and the chat exploded with gratitude. He leaned back, whispering, "Truth carries further than lies." His reflection in the screen showed a man no longer afraid, but responsible. He smiled faintly, exhaustion mixing with relief. Outside, dawn filtered into his room, brighter than any spotlight. Derek sat alone in his empty studio, neon sign dark, headset abandoned on the desk. He whispered, "They'll remember me only for this." His hands trembled as he closed his laptop for the last time. The silence pressed in, heavier than the noise he once commanded. His voice cracked, "I thought I was untouchable." The room answered with nothing but the hum of dying equipment. Maya stood before a quiet gathering, her voice calm yet firm. "You cannot erase me," she said, "and I will not vanish." The crowd leaned in, not with outrage but with reverence. Ruth's tears glistened, Lena's smile shone, and Owen watched from the side, silent but proud. Maya's final words cut through the silence like steel. "The truth is mine," and it always was. A hush lingered, heavy, unforgettable, before the applause rose like thunder, sealing her place beyond shame.